Hello, this lesson is on functions and specifically piecewise functions. So a piecewise function is a function that is whose domain is split. And so what you have here is the domain is the set of x coordinates. So to start, the x coordinates that are between 0 and 10 are going to give outputs based on this function rule, this equation here at the top. But the x values that are greater than 10 are going to produce outputs based on this function rule here. So what we want to do is we want to put this function into Excel, and we start like we normally do. Our input variables go in the first column, and our output variables go in the second column. And so we get to decide what our x values are. That's the domain. We get to pick it. And so when you look at this piecewise function here, you can see that the x's are going to all be greater than 0. So we know we can start at 0. And then we can count by 2's if we want to. And then what we can do is select the 0 and the 2, and when we do that, that tells Excel that we want to count by 2's. Now we can drag down. We can't stop at 10, because if we stopped at 10 we would only see the function rule for the first equation. So we want to make sure that we go past 10 a good way so that we can get a visual on this full piecewise function. Okay, now here's how you type in a piecewise function. You have to do it this way. You can't do it separately, so make sure you pay attention. We're going to use a new function called the if function. We don't use many functions that Excel has for us, but this is one. And so you see this FX button. We're going to click that, and mine is set on most recently used. So the if function is going to pop right up, but for some reason if your if function doesn't pop right up, if you click all, you can see all the functions that Excel has. So if you can go to type in to search, you can type in if and then go, and then it'll pop up. So we want to choose the if function, and when we choose the if function, there's always going to be 3 dialog boxes that pop up. The first one says logical test. And so you're always going to start right here where it says x is less than or equal to 10. Now note, you never have to, there's 2 inequalities. Excel's not going to understand 2 inequalities. It only wants 1. So this first one, 0 is less than, we took care of when we decided to count starting at 0. So we don't need to put that in this dialog box, but what we do want to put in is x is less than or equal to 10. And remember, we never actually type in x, we use cell references. So I'm going to go click A2 where that first x is located. Then I'm going to hit shift in the less than and then the equal to. So that's how you type in less than or equal to, and then 10. So that's our logical test. And it says if that's true, see that true there, then the value is going to come from the first equation, the top equation. So I'm going to type A2 caret 2 plus 3 times A2 plus 5. Now this is where it gets interesting. So then it says value if false. So we know that A is less than or equal to 2 is our true statement. The false statement is the opposite of A2 is less than or equal to 10. So if A is not less than or equal to 10, it must be greater than 10. So see that right there? That's why you don't have to ever type that in. That is always the opposite of what is in the first box. So the second box says value if false. That would be the second equation. So I'm going to type in 3/5 times A2 minus 10. All right, and we've got everything typed in. We'll click OK, and now what we'll do is we're going to drag this down. So we're going to use the fill button and drag it down. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to graph this so we can see this piecewise function, and I always use this scatter with, don't connect the dots here, so scatter with markers only is what this is called. And you can see that from 0 to 10 it behaves like this parabola, but from 10 and on it's going to behave like this line. So that is our piecewise function. Okay, so to review, when you're asked to type in a piecewise function, you're going to hit the function fx and the if command, and this dialog box comes up. Box 1 will always be this, and it won't ever need to be this 0 because you take care of that. It doesn't understand two inequalities. You take care of that right here. And then box 2 will be equation 1, and box 3 will be equation 2. Okay, let's take a look at example 2. This time we were going to look at a word problem. And it says the price V of T in dollars of eBay stock during the 20-week period starting July 1st, 2004 can be approximated by the following function of time, T in weeks. So it's always a good idea to write down our Math English Dictionary. So T equals weeks since July 1, 2004. And V of T is value in dollars of eBay stock. So this is our input and our output. And there is our function, and it's piecewise. So we're going to put this in the way we did the first one. Our input column is T. It's always the first column. Our output column is V of T. And because it says T is between 0 and 5, I know I'm starting at 0. And this one's a little different than the other one. It's 0 to 20 because T has to be less than or equal to 20. So we're looking at only 20 weeks. So I'll go ahead and count by ones and pull it down to 20. Okay, and then do you remember how to put your piecewise function in? You have to hit fx and find the if function, which we just used, so it should pop right up. And then you've got these 3 columns, and remember box 1 is this T is less than or equal to 5, so hit the cell A2 is less than or equal to 5, and the value of true is the equation 1, so that's 90 minus 4 times A2, and the box 3, the value of false, is equation 2, so that's 60 plus 2 times T, which is A2. Once you have that, you click OK, and we're going to pull this down. Okay, now since it's a word problem, I'm going to explain why it's so important to graph. Alright, so let's go ahead and select both columns and click Insert, Scatter First Box, and we get this. This is what our stock prices are doing. Alright, now we can answer question 1. Find the value of the stock 5 weeks after July 1, 2004 and interpret your answer. So T is in weeks, so that 5 is our T. So this is an input-output question. I've given you the input, and so all you have to do is find it on the T column, and the answer is 70. Now don't just leave it in Excel. You have to interpret your answer. So what that means is not explain. Don't explain to me what you did. Just interpret it. So I would say something like, now this gets a little interesting because it says 5 weeks after July 1. So I don't want you to usually just say 5 weeks after July 1. I want you to actually figure out what that is. So what I did is I just wrote on paper 7-1 is the 0 week, and then I added 7 5 times. So I got July 8th, July 15th, July 22nd, and then July 29th is the 4th week after 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 8-5. So I'm going to say in August, or August 5th, 2004, the value of the stock was $70. And so I just want you to try to practice giving it a complete interpretation where you make it easy for the reader, and so make sure everything has units on it. Okay, so we don't need to explain. We just want to write one sentence of interpretation. All right, the second question is, when will the stock be $82? Okay, so this time I've given you the stock value, which is the output, and I want to find the input. So these are always harder. And what you're going to have to do usually is goal seek. I mean, really the first thing to do is to look to see if 82 is showing up on in the column, and it is, but actually most of the time it won't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that is not here. So I'm going to show you how to goal seek. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull this down 2 more times to get 2 answers. Now, how do I know there's going to be 2 answers? Well, let me take you over to the graph. This is why the graph is so important, because here is your value. Your y-axis is the value of the stock, and we want to find 82 when the stock was $82. So here's 82, and if I draw a line, it's trying to make it straight, sorry about that, straight across, then I can see that it is happening in 2 places. And so we have to help Excel out when this happens, because the way Excel works is it's always going to start goal seeking at where the number is. So if I goal seek right now, it would start looking at 21 and go to the right and the left, and it would keep looking until it found an answer. If I put a nothing in there, then Excel is going to start looking at 0 and stop when it finds an answer. Okay, so let's goal seek, and it's looking around 0. So what I'm going to do to goal seek, if you remember, is you're going to click on the cell that you want to become 82, and you're going to go to Data, and then What If Analysis, and then Goal Seek, and you want to change the value to 82 by changing this cell. And so what it's going to do, it's going to look around 0 till it finds it, and it found it right there when X was 2, which we kind of already knew, right? Now, if I were to have a 0 here and goal seeked again, it's going to find that same number. And so I want to look at this graph and tell Excel where to look. So I can use my eyeball and say that the answer is somewhere between 10 and 15, again pretending we don't know the answer. So maybe I might put a 12 in here. This is what's known as a guess number. And when I do that, I'm helping Excel out, and I'm saying, hey, Excel, can you look around 12 to the left and the right and stop when you find the answer? And that'll ensure it won't find that first 2 answer. So I'm going to click on the V of T and say hit Data, What If Analysis, Goal Seek to 82 by changing this cell where the 12 is, and what it's doing, it's going to look around 12 to the left and the right, and it finds it. So when you have more than one answer, you have to be able to put in guess numbers so that it will find both. Okay, now how do we interpret our answer? Remember, we're going to write a sentence. So it would look like this. When will the stock be $82? Well, 2 weeks after July 1st would be mid-July, and 11 weeks after July 1st would be August, September. That's 8, so that would be mid-September 2004. The stock prices will be $82. So I wanted to make sure you understand what it means to interpret your answer. That's going to be important. You're going to have to write that on your test paper. I'm not going to just be looking at Excel, and you have to demonstrate that you understand what these numbers mean. So you can't just highlight them and say, okay, I answered the question. You have to make sure that you interpret them as well. All right, let's look at example 3. This is from your lab manual. I'm not sure what the page number is now. We've edited, but it's in the Piecewise section. And it says the Pierce family is planning their dream vacation and they want to travel to the Cayman Islands. They will do a live aboard vacation, which is like a floating hotel. The price includes accommodations, food and beverages, air tanks for diving, and diving assistance. In other words, it's all inclusive. The prices for a 5-day stay are as follows: $5 a dive if the total number of dives is 10 or less, $750 and $3 a dive if the total number of dives is more than 10 plus the $750. A says express the cost C as a function of the number of dives D. Okay, so even though I've already given you the equation, I just want to take time to help you learn how to read these problems and interpret them. So when it says express the cost C as a function of the number of dives D, that's telling you that D is your input variable and its number of dives, and C of D is equal to the cost in dollars. So we want to start getting used to writing down our units. This problem we used to make you write this equation, but not anymore. So I've already given that. You could have written this yourself, but it's $750 plus $5 a dive if you dive between 0 and 10 dives, but it's $750 plus $3 a dive if you dive more than 10. So we can move to B and C. So B says determine the cost of diving 8 times on this vacation, and C says determine the cost of diving 15 times on this vacation. So what we can do is we can put D in and C of D in, and since it's a piecewise function, we're going to use the if command. And you've got those 3 boxes. And so remember, box 1, you're not going to put the 0 in the box. Okay. What you're going to do is just put the 0 over here. So I'm just going to put D, which is cell A2, is less than or equal to 10. And then box 2 is equation 1. So that's 750 plus 5 times cell A2. And then box 3 is a second equation, 750 plus 3 times D. All right, now I know I'm starting at 0 and I need to go past 10, so I'll count by 2s. And don't stop at 10, you want to go past 10, so we'll go all the way to 34, and then we'll insert a scatter plot so we can see this. So you can see both of these are linear. You're going to charge a higher price per dive if you only do 0 to 10 dives, and it'll go down to a lower price if you do more than 10 dives. Okay, so determine the cost of diving 8 times on this vacation. Well, that is you're given your input 8, so that is just right on this here. All right, so you would write, don't just leave it that way. So let's do a text box. Well, we got a text box, so let's escape, undo that. All right, so let's go ahead and write B, answer, at 8 dives units, the cost is $790 units. Always add your units. And C, determine the cost of diving 15 times. Since I counted by 2s, it's not there, so I'm just going to type 15 in for D and get $795. So at 15 dives, the cost is $795. All right, and again, just to practice, I wanted to add a question and maybe ask the question, how many dives we have to dive if you wanted to spend $790. Well, again, if I give you the output, you got to look at this graph and see that there's actually two answers, which isn't really realistic, but there you go. So right there, so X is either going to be somewhere before 10, maybe 9, and somewhere after 9, maybe 11. And so if you want to practice this, you would want to pull this down, and remember you need guess numbers. If you've got more than two possible answers, so my guess numbers are going to be 9 and 11. And then I'm going to goal seek to 790. So data, what if analysis, goal seek, change B21 to 790 by changing this input. It's going to look around 9 and stop, and it gets 8. And then again, if I goal seek to 790 by changing this input where 11 is, it's going to look around 11 and get 13.33 dives. So that's just an additional lesson on how to goal seek, especially if you have two different answers you want to put guess numbers in.